Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jedi Way. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, sometimes known as Rocha Fett, joined as always by the greatest person in the galaxy, Laura Kelly. How are you, Laura?
I'm good, John. I am well-traveled this week, so I'm a little bit tired, but I'm excited to be here to talk about the show. I did squeeze 2 viewings in, managed to on the airplane and on the drive. I wasn't driving, for the record. But yeah, missing Kevin this week, unfortunately. He's feeling a little bit under the weather.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are without Kevin, as Laura said. He tried to rally today, but unfortunately just could not find the strength he had. He called off of work for 2 days as well, so this is clearly a serious thing for him. So he's taking it easy. We know those bugs are going around, and those cases the numbers are rising, so you got to be careful, and you don't want to exhaust yourself. So unfortunately, we don't have Kevin, but Laura and I, going back to the old school lineup, we'll do the best we can in navigating episode 6 here, Laura. This is a big one, far, far away. What an episode, so much involved in it. Of course, you've been leading our reviews, so please take it away. Let's jump into this thing.
Well, thank you. So the episode title does not really get more on the nose than that with Far, Far Away, but it's kind of fitting. It kind of works. So that said, for a new galaxy, we've got a lot of old familiar faces. We've got some Night Sisters, some witches, and we've got friendly reptilian aliens, which has been kind of a staple of live-action Star Wars lately. But last week's episode was primarily focused on our titular character. Episode 6 catches up with Sabine and our posse of villains. So we've been building up to this for 5 weeks. Yeah. Now we have 2 episodes left. The search for Ezra and Thrawn has come to an end. So the question at this point is, now what? And there's lots of different roads I think we could go on. What did you think of this episode?
I like this episode. I mean, when you're coming out of an episode like we just had in episode 5, where this was like, everyone's like, this is peak Star Wars. This is the greatest Star Wars. It's hard to follow it up, right? Like some people, they hate to go up on a stage after a person has absolutely killed it. You're like, oh my gosh, how do I go? Well, the way you follow it up is to go kind of back to the basics, kind of go a foundational approach here where you're introducing some animated mythology into live action mythology and figuring out how to make that work and not pushing too far out of your comfort zone, but just enough to make it feel new and different and unique. And I like that. And you reconnect with the relationships here. Sabine's love for Ezra, whatever form that's going to take, is there. Morgan Elsbeth's connection with Thrawn, the Night Mothers, or Night Sisters rather, and the Great Mothers, their connection with Thrawn. Then Shin, Hati, and Baylan. Shin, Hati getting more information about Baylan's past that clearly she didn't know about. That connective tissue there as well. And then, of course, later on, Ezra and Sabine, and then Thrawn and Sabine, which I think is one of the best scenes in the whole series so far. So a lot of that has just as much magic as the magic we got in the last episode, but just a bit more subdued. But I did thoroughly enjoy it, and we got Ezra and Thrawn way earlier than I think anybody expected. And now we've got them for the next 2 episodes. So, man, it's a hell of a tightrope they're walking now. It just gets higher and higher every episode, Laura.
Exactly. I've seen a lot of praise for this one too, but for me, I think it was always going to be really hard to top that, like, just unrelenting high of last week's, of part 5. So, I mean, that said, I was really excited to finally catch up with our villains this week and to see the amazing, dramatic, grand entrance of Thrawn and finally catch back up with Ezra. I mean, I think I said from the beginning, like, I think that, like, Ezra in the hologram was, like, pretty much going to be it. I didn't think we were going to see much of Ezra this season, if at all. We've already gotten so much more Ezra than I thought even before this. And then this episode just blew my mind at the end. So overall, utterly delighted. But that high of last week, this episode kind of had a lot to live up to for me.
Yeah.
Well, shall we dive into part 1 of of this episode, this 48-minute episode, I think. So we open with the T6 in the mouth of the whale. Ahsoka tells Huyang that she didn't tell Hera that Sabine went with the enemy willingly, and she worries about how this whole thing is going to play out. Huyang points out that this may have been Sabine's only choice. And as they ride through hyperspace, Ahsoka asks Huyang to tell her a story, and he begins, "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away." Right on the nose. So then we cut to the Eye of Sion, where Sabine wakes up in a cell. She is still cuffed, and she and Baylan have a little back and forth, a little tiff, and she yells at him, saying that he promised that she would see Ezra again, but he just walks out. Later, he tells Morgan that Sabine is impatient, but her singular focus on Ezra blinds her, so that can still be useful. The ship then exits hyperspace and heads to Peridea, a planet that is surrounded by a ring of debris. Peridea is the ancient homeworld of Morgan's ancestors, the Dathomiri. And Baylan says that it's the end of the migration route for the Purrgil between galaxies, and that the whales come here to die, and that Peridea is a graveyard. So a little bit of foreshadowing I'm a little bit afraid of there. I'm not sure, John. I don't know if everyone's going to survive this. So then we have to cut back to Peridea and down sort of heading down to the surface. Shin retrieves Sabine, and our merry band of villains ride down to the surface on a shiny gold shuttle. On the way down, we see large statues of Night Sisters towering over the planet, over the surface, and our group disembarks, rolls up to a pod of witches that are dressed in red, and Morgan calls the leader the Great Mother. They say that they've waited for them for a long time and that Thrawn is coming. The Great Mother looks at Sabine and says it reeks of Jedi and it's dangerous. So Sabine is then restrained by a laser rope thing to wait in solitude. As the shuttle flies away, it leaves Shin and Baylan on the surface. Baylan tells Shin that Peridea is a land of dreams, madness, and children's stories come to life. She tells him that sometimes stories are just stories, and he says that as he's aged, he realizes that everything repeats, that the fall of the Jedi and then the rise of the Empire, and again, this just keeps happening. When Shin asks if it's their turn for power now, he says that power is fleeting and Baylan wants a beginning so that he can bring the cycle to an end. So we'll pause there. We are beginning to get some clarity on Baylan's motives here, John. Like he's being paid to help Morgan, but he clearly has like his own objective here. What are you thinking he has in mind?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is why you cast an actor like Ray Stevenson. Like from the beginning, we knew that there was something more that he was going after. We sensed just from the way he was carrying himself, the way he was interacting with everybody, there's an old presence to him. And I don't just mean because he's older. I mean, like, even with someone who's, I would imagine, is older than he is, Morgan Elsbeth, he still has this kind of real control over himself. He has a clarity of purpose. He knows where he's going. He's not caught up in all this other emotional stuff. For him, it's very clear. Everyone is a tool to get to that purpose. And I think it comes through here in this conversation, finally, with Shin Hati, because obviously, as I said, we've all been waiting for what the background is with Baylan, why he's doing what he's doing. People speculated he might be angling to get control of the world between worlds. There's other angles, like maybe him and Thrawn, and he's getting some vengeance for something happened to his family or whatever, or he's got anger towards the Jedi he wants to take out. But no, at the end, it's just someone I think mentioned it online. It's like Daenerys, he's looking to break the wheel, like she wanted to do in the final season of Game of Thrones. He wants to shatter this pattern. Now, we know that ultimately he's not going to succeed, but there's, even in his villainy, there's a nobility here that he is tired of the repetitive patterns and he wants to shatter it. And I love that because, you know, we're seeing that now in our world nowadays. A lot of people in larger numbers are questioning things that we've had in our lives for a long time, or questioning patterns, or questioning the structures or the systems that we have in place, because people are seeing through the fallacy. No matter what political point of view you have, people are seeing through these systems and these institutions, and they're seeing some of the corruption and the repetitive patterns that have been around for generations and generations, and they want to destroy it all and burn it to the ground. Whether that's good or not, I don't know. That's for different people to decide, or for yourself to decide. But Baylan has that point of view. He is tired of this over and over. And I love that he said, when it happened when I was younger, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. And he's almost sounding, and I'm going to make this comparison, throughout this episode, it feels a little bit like Apocalypse Now. And I don't know if people have seen the movie, but Brando has, as Colonel Kurtz, has this moment where he talks about, like, I had this realization, like a diamond bullet, when I saw what these people were willing to do in order to save their country or protect their country. It drove me insane, and I understood that I had to shatter everything and every connection that I have and move past the army, move past the United States, be my own thing. And that's what it sounds like Baylan is doing here. And I think there's a real power in that. And later we'll see where he tells Shin Hati, I'm not training you to be a Jedi. I'm training you to be something better, something else, something different. And so clearly he has all this purpose here. But I'm also fascinated, Laura, about the opening here, because it is Sabine saying to Huyang, she made a selfish choice. I should have trained her. I wish I had more time. Then she would have made the right choice, which is essentially the choice I would have made. So there's an interesting back and forth with her and Huyang at the beginning here that I'm surprised by, because I thought we had Ahsoka the White or Ahsoka the Gray, who understood and was more accepting, and now we have her judging Sabine. So what did you think about Baylan in the opening scene here with Huyang and Ahsoka?
Well, I think with Ahsoka and Huyang, this is a really interesting place, because you're right. I kind of felt like we'd resolved a lot of this in the last episode, and yet here she is kind of lamenting that Sabine could have ended this entire thing already, but also sort of weighing the option of like, this may have been her destiny. This may have been her fate the entire time to make this choice way that she made. I think what I'm more interested to find out is what we get hopefully next episode is, what is Ezra going to think of all of this? And how is he going to interpret all of this? But I think when it comes to Baylan, the sort of juxtaposition between him and Thrawn, these two villains, they both have, I think you called it like this nobility, and they both are rocking that in the best ways. And this sort of quest for power, they're both kind of after these same things, but they're going about it in very different ways. And I am very curious to see if these two things are going to clash at some point. I think it kind of feels inevitable, but at the same time, Thrawn wants off the planet. Baylan kind of seems like he might want to stick around. So that it might just work out. The power balance might just work itself out in this moment. But the two of them together is definitely something I'm hoping we get more of on screen. But Baylan, I mean, you said it, like Ray Stevenson, the gravitas that he's been bringing to this performance. I was really missing him last episode. As much as I loved part 5, I did kind of miss him in this little extra something that he brings to these stories. But that moment really stuck with me, where he talked about Peridea as a graveyard. I don't know. Someone's going to die here. I don't know if it's Sabine or Ezra, or I don't think it's going to be Ahsoka. She's already died once. She can't do it again.
Right.
She's died multiple times, honestly, but not, and we can't do it one time in this season. Or maybe it's one of our villains, but I think it's clear at this point that someone's not going home. I don't know. I'm a little bit weary of that.
I hadn't thought of that. I thought you were thinking the Purrgil, but you're talking about, because clearly we see bones floating in space. So, and he says later on to terminate any Purrgil with extreme prejudice that he sees, which is also an Apocalypse Now line. But like this idea of one of the main characters dying, I hadn't thought of, because I mean, we just found Ezra. I don't know if Ezra would Ezra sacrifice himself yet again? Is this why he isn't in like the new First Order and all of this stuff? He's not involved in any of that. Will Sabine be the one who sacrificed? I'd be real surprised if Sabine does it. So yeah, it's a good question, because once he finds out how this all happened, which we're going to get to, she hides from him initially, I think is going to be a hell of a confrontation, especially when Ahsoka shows up and all three of them have this conversation. It's going to be a hell of a conversation for sure.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about really quick before we move on to this next section is this, number one, the title, and number two, this line that Huyang says about a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It just feels too on the nose to me, and it comes off a little bit lazy and tacky. And I think it almost kind of feels like you told a robot to write a Star Wars script, and that's what it did. It said the quiet part out loud, quite literally, with the galaxy far, far away. Am I being overly critical? Am I being cranky? Is it because I was traveling and I wasn't sitting in my room calmly watching this episode and appreciating it for what it was? What do you think?
I think you have every right to your feeling about it, and I think if it worked for you, cranky or not, you would have liked it. So the fact that because I'm sure you've watched stuff you like when you're tired and still enjoy the hell out of it. So it just for whatever reason, I think for you, for the reason it seems like for you, is they hung the lantern way too brightly on this, and it seems that this was a Filoni homage to Lucas, because he loves George, and all of that. And so he probably was kind of making a connection here. And there are some A New Hope connections for sure, or original trilogy connections in this episode. When we see later with Sabine and the Noti, certainly feels like Leia and the Ewoks. And so there's stuff from original trilogy that's all over this episode as well. And I think The Far, Far Away is fascinating to make the connection between that and the title of the episode. But also it fits, isn't it? Because this is our first experience in a new area of the galaxy that we've never seen, that is far, far away. But also this idea of what stories does Huyang know? What stories does he tell Ahsoka and others in the temple? What is this part 1, part 2, and part 3? Is this another cute thing, allusion to A New Hope or to Phantom Menace? Or is this all the way back to the beginning? Is this the Mangold stuff that he's hinting at? Right. I don't know, you know? So
yeah, I was kind of questioning that. A lot of people are saying like, oh yeah, it's like the original or the prequel, the original, the sequel. I'm like, why did my mind go first? Like the High Republic was like first. Ooh, and then like, then this is only the second, like this galactic civil war and the First Order. I'm like, what's the third? Right. I feel like that's yet to come. I don't know. So I again, just a little bit on the nose. I could like feel the cynic in me hearing that line, just being like, okay, it's fine, but good God.
I got to ask you, though, about the animated stuff. Did you like seeing the Night Sisters in live action in this way? Did you think the costume worked? Did you like the voice calibration, the design and the makeup of the faces? Did you like their energy overall?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It was giving a lot of like, we didn't get a ton of Night Sister stuff in Rebels, but in the Clone Wars, like, oh boy, yeah, it was delivering for sure. And I mean, Asajj Ventress was such a fantastic character and so well-rounded, especially if you read the book Dark Disciple. So it was really fun, kind of bringing a lot more of just that kind of Star Wars weirdness, this sort of fringe section of the Force, and bringing it in to like the central part of the story. I was very excited. I'm sure if you've played the like Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order games, I'm sure there's even more of it there. Must have been exciting to see.
Yeah, with Marin. Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if she'll get a shout out at some point. What about this idea that they smell a Jedi on Sabine? I mean, Sabine's not a Jedi. So was that odd for you? Were they maybe predicting something? Because obviously there's Macbeth references with these three witches all over the place. But do you think that they are alluding to the fact that she will become a Jedi in the future? Or what do you think that was all about?
I do question that. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was just sort of smelling like the righteousness on her or something. I don't know. Even if it's not just like the full on in your face Force capabilities, maybe there's something else to it. I'm not sure. But yeah, that was kind of funny. But it's also, it sort of makes me question a little bit. And I guess it's a bit part of a bigger picture with the Night Sisters, that they're not necessarily dark or light. There's kind of this like gray area that they can sometimes fall into, though it appears maybe these three are sort of falling a little bit more towards the dark if they are this put off by the stench of Jedi and righteousness on Sabine. The line made me laugh though, where they called her it just made me giggle. That part was, I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it was funny as hell to me.
For sure.
All right, so we'll jump into part 2 here. We've got Sabine waiting in a cell right as Thrawn's Star Destroyer, the Chimera, pulls up, and we can see that it is patched with gold where the Purrgil damaged it, and just looks incredibly cool. I was so excited to see it in live action. But Morgan, Baylan, and Shin stand by as Thrawn makes his dramatic entrance, marching through the Night Trooper ranks as they chant his name. The Night Trooper armor is also patched up with red and gold. Has a very cool look to it. Going to sell a lot of toys. Thrawn tells the group that what was once a dream has become a frightening reality for those who may oppose us, and he salutes the Great Mothers, saying that their escape from exile is thanks to Morgan. Morgan says that she has seen the catacombs and it'll take 3 rotations to move cargo. Thrawn's like, that's cool. I'm questioning. I have a lot of questions about that part. And that is the one line we get of that. And then we move on and don't address it again in this episode. But the Great Mothers say that Baylan brought a prisoner. Thrawn's like, who the hell is Baylan? And Morgan introduces Baylan and Shin as mercenaries. When Thrawn learns that the prisoner that they brought with them is Sabine Wren, he agrees agrees with Baylan that she'll be of great use. Sabine is then brought to Thrawn. He thanks her for aiding in his escape from exile and says that he will honor her agreement with Baylan. He gives her provisions, a Howler to ride, and their latest intel on Ezra's whereabouts. But he does warn her that Ezra could be dead, and when his ship leaves, she will be stranded here. She tells him that if Thrawn managed to survive this long, that Ezra is probably thriving. Thrawn warns her that she gambled the fate of her galaxy on that belief. Enoch then tells Sabine that it's dog-eat-dog out there, and the nomads kill each other for survival. He gives her her blasters and her saber and tells her to die well. Very friendly. She rides off on the Howler into the distance, and Thrawn tells Baylan and Shin to follow her at their own pace. And when Shin questions this, Thrawn tells her that Sabine will have the opportunity to find Ezra, and when she does, Shin and Baylan will destroy them both. So out in the wilderness of Peridea, Sabine rides off and then is shot off of her mount by bandits. The Howler runs off. The gunfight leads to some hand-to-hand combat. It ultimately leads to Sabine fighting off the bandits with her lightsaber, and a couple of surviving bandits run off, but Sabine's tracking device she was using to try and find Ezra is destroyed in the process. So then we cut back to Baylan and Shin, who ride away from the Chimera on Howlers, and Thrawn tells Morgan that his primary objective is to escape this galaxy, and he doesn't care if Ezra, Sabine, Baylan, and Shin die here, and they have to leave them behind, which is just makes total sense, actually, for Thrawn. So this is our first up-close, in-personal live look at live-action Thrawn. I mean, we got like just a little snippet in previews and in photos. What did you think of his look? I have to know. What did you think of Lars Mikkelsen's performance here?
I got to say, his performance was great, and it was so fun to see him come around from behind the mic. And obviously, I've seen him in House of Cards, and I know he's a damn good actor. Seeing him portray this character was really cool. There's such a measured delivery and measured power in how he speaks to everybody. And it's different from the animated Thrawn. Like, the animated Thrawn is much more stiff. This Thrawn takes in what you're saying for a second, cocks the head, like kind of leans in even. So I like that it's different physical characterization of this Thrawn versus the animated Thrawn. Still intelligent, still measured, still, you know, very much in control of himself. But I liked that you had that energy that he can actually take you out any moment he feels like he wants to. You mean that little to him, other than, unless you're helping him, then like we see with the Great Mothers, he's willing to speak to them with a little more respect, a little more, not nobility, but a little more of the bending of the knee or whatever to them. You can sense that there's a little adjustment in his tone. But so the introduction, I don't think was I don't know. I wish they had just stayed with him as he walked through the troops, showing him from the side, showing him from this angle. I didn't think was the best. Just watching him from behind, though, that was awesome. And you can't escape the Nazi symbolism of these night troopers being there. And I saw some people speculate that they could be zombie stormtroopers. So if we're opening that door, which there was in Legends, death troopers that were zombie stormtroopers. So if we're opening that door, oh my God, is he going out into the wastelands of the mystical shit in Star Wars? Filoni is. So I'm down with that. But yeah, I like the energy here. I like how he measured Baylan. I like that he knew Baylan was General Baylan Skoll of the Jedi Order, and the Sabine reaction, right? There wasn't, he's not going to give you much, but there was enough there for him to be like, oh, now that's a name I know, you know, so you get that power with it all. And again, I like the Asian influence here in terms of the look of the night troopers and Enoch here, and this idea of melding gold to fix things, which is
Kintsugi, right?
Yeah, Kintsugi, yeah, exactly. So having that be a part of this, I think, is another way to put some subtle Asian vibes to this, which is, of course, Lucas being influenced by Kurosawa way back in the original trilogy. So having that be an element here, I think, is another kind of original trilogy reference and what have you. So yeah, I liked all of this overall, and him saying like, I don't care about them getting out of this galaxy. That's what matters. That to me is opening the door to the possibility of Shin and Baylan becoming allied with Ezra and Sabine against Thrawn down the road, which will probably lead to Baylan's death. But I imagine that's where we're headed, which is why he made it seem like they could die and he could care less. And Morgan, I think Morgan is real close to dying. I mean, she questions him. She asks a lot of questions of a guy like Thrawn. And so I'm going to be very curious to see what her ultimate fate is going to be. And you talk about people dying earlier, Laura. It could be Baylan who dies. That could be the person who does die here in all of this. And he's certainly been built up as this noble character, even though he's got villainous tendencies. And so the death may have more impact than we anticipated when we started the series.
Right. He's got those villainous tendencies and that nobility, but he also just feels kind of tragic. And I don't think that's just Ray Stevenson's death kind of hanging over everything. He's just kind of this like sad, jaded, kind of like not defeated, but sometimes kind of bordering on that sort of feel. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. I hadn't given that much thought, but as to how we're going to end this season with him. But I think something like that might end up making a lot of sense. But as far as the Thrawn of it all, getting Lars Mikkelsen in this role was such a win for me, because we had all that speculation of who was going to play Thrawn. We had him up and down denying that it was going to be him. And I just, nobody else could have pulled this off. No actor, I don't think, could have been as effective, especially with that voice and that delivery ever. I'm not stating that as an opinion. I think that's just the way it is. Like, it's just, he's just that good. And I remember reading some interviews where he talked about how he alters the voice of Thrawn a little bit compared to his voice performance in Rebels, where he talked about how that was a lot more kind of, I don't know if he used the word melodious, but that was sort of what he was getting at, the way that Thrawn spoke. And he backtracked on that just a little bit for this live action version. So it just came off a little bit more realistic. I don't think I noticed much of a difference. The whole thing felt very seamless to me, to the character in Rebels. The performance was just an absolute knockout for me. Just loved it. Yeah.
Well, we got to address some of the controversy here, Laura. Some people have been commenting on the look or the weight or the body shaming or the age. What do you want to chime in on this weekend? We don't have to, but memes were made. I mean,
there were memes made. You guys, listen, in this house, we do not body shame anyone. We certainly do not body shame Star Wars actors who are so perfectly cast as Lars Mikkelsen. Not in this house. I don't like it. But I also have seen it. I've seen some of the jokes. I don't know.
People are never satisfied. It's never enough. It's
never. Exactly. Which is unfortunate, because his performance is just awesome. And seeing the Chimera in live action, that photoreal version of it, with the sort of like the art that's on the underside of it kind of faded because it's been so long, just the perfect touch. It was a lot more clear like in Rebels, and the fact that it's kind of started to it's gotten a lot more gray is just, oh man, that's these little attention to details, you guys. This is what makes this kind of stuff great. This is what makes like Filoni great in these kinds of, in this sort of setting.
Yeah, and it reminded me a lot of, again, the original trilogy. The first shot of A New Hope is that Star Destroyer coming after that ship right above our heads as a viewer when we're watching that in the opening of A New Hope. So when we see the Chimera, it has that same kind of rumbling and unsettling nature of scope. The fact that it just descends on this temple and essentially consumes the top half of this temple is just a fascinating thing to witness, and its power. And it's also interesting because we get our third Sabine Force fake out, like with the cup, then with Shin Hati in the battle, and now here. So I wonder what all of this is leading to with the Force fake out. Is she eventually going to be able to use the Force by the end of the series in a critical moment? I don't know, but they're really kind of pointing out these moments. So I just wonder about it.
Yeah. I wonder if Ezra's going to get her there. If she just needed, I feel like they're building to it a little bit. We've had, like you said, we've had 3 of these. You can't do a 4th one. You'll have overdone it. So hopefully that'll be it. And the next time we see it, maybe she actually does accomplish it, or we just finally come to terms with the fact that Sabine is not going to be able to use the Force, because not everybody can. And that's okay. She has other strengths. She's a powerful warrior in many other aspects. So I'll be interested to see where it goes.
I have one more question for you. Okay. Enoch is like shocking to me as a character. Of course, there's biblical references or the Torah references to Enoch and what have you, but the look of him is like old school. Like it feels like Game of Thrones when they were putting those masks on. I think season 7 or season 8, what it was. So it's got that vibe of old school stuff to it. But also, why does he warn her about the nomads? Right. Why does he give her weapons and tell her to die well? Like, I understand why I give the weapons, but the die well part of it all, is it warrior to warrior? Is he a former Mandalorian, or does he actually care about Sabine? Is there a sense of like, even with Thrawn under his service, you have to be noble to these antagonists, to your protagonists? I don't know. What did you think about this? Or did you think it was, just standard stuff? What was your thoughts?
I think this was kind of standard Thrawn stuff. This is kind of how Thrawn operates. So I kind of took this as him kind of rubbing off on his troops, on his, like, what appears to be sort of a second in command. I mean, we saw plenty of, I think, examples of Thrawn in Rebels where, you know, he sort of will say, like, you know, let them have this win. They earned their victory today. Let's let them take these 4 Y-Wings that they stole from this Imperial destruction facility. Like, things like that will creep into sort of Thrawn's persona every now and again. We saw that a lot, I think, somewhat frequently in Rebels. So this kind of lined up for me as somebody who's been under Thrawn probably for the last, 10-ish years in exile on this planet. But I agree, it was kind of an unusual move, and it did seem, but it had some nobility to it. And I kind of sense like there's some level of respect there. Even if I'm wrong and it's not like Thrawn influence and that's just who Enoch is, but I'm starting to wonder, like, is Enoch is he our new Merrick? Are all of these people going to be making I'm already seeing some of the theories pop up. Like, you guys, did you not learn? He's probably just who he is. Like, let's not build him up to be something that he's not. Let's learn our lesson. Like, what did you think? How did you interpret that moment?
Yeah, to me, I saw it as warrior to warrior, right? And I think you're right. It's an extension of Thrawn. Thrawn is not driven by emotion. Thrawn is driven by intellect and logic. And so, kind of like Spock in Star Trek, right? Like, for him, obviously not evil like Spock. Like, Spock's not evil like he is, but like, he figures out what's the right. And then if he's bested, he accepts the loss and moves on because he knows he will live to fight another day and may eventually get the best of this person down the road. So he said he was going to honor the deal with Sabine. And like any good person who's a little bit of a, how can I say this? A little bit of a manipulator. He is honoring the deal by the spirit and the technical aspect of the deal. I will give you a mount, I'll give you your weapons, blah, blah, blah. But I'm also going to send people out to kill you. So I'm going to honor the deal, but you're going to die if I have anything to say about it. So maybe Enoch is an extension of that to give her some level of feeling like, oh, this is done. I don't have to worry about him, to let her guard down so that they can attack more easily. So we'll see. And I don't know if Enoch's going to be sent out. But I think it was funny because I saw some people going like, I thought that might be Ezra for a second. And I was like, oh my God, like, it's never going to end until he shows up. But people, thank
goodness that they like nip that in the butt by the end of this episode. They're like, we can't let that theory run. We got to show them. Good for them on that choice.
Exactly. All right, well, let's take a quick break, Laura, and then we'll jump into the last section of this episode here as we discuss it right when we come back. All right, let's get into it, Laura. Last section of the show. What do we got?
When we open back up on the wilderness of Peridea, Sabine walks as her Howler follows. She yells at him for being a coward and abandoning her. And they have some sort of cute, humorous moments where it's kind of chasing after her, whimpering. I absolutely loved it. And eventually she climbs back on and they ride off. So after a bit, the Howler stops and licks a rock, which then springs to life, revealing that it is actually this crab/turtle-like alien called Noti. I don't know. I'm going to go with Noti. The Noti recognizes the rebel starbird symbol on Sabine's pauldron and shows her his own medallion with the matching symbol. Sabine realizes that the Noti must know Ezra, then several more Noti come out of hiding and agree to lead her to their camp. Sabine follows the little aliens, and then we have to cut over to Baylan and Shin, who find the bandits that Sabine took out. And we get this great conversation with Shin and Baylan, where she asks him if he knew Ezra, and he tells her no, that Ezra was too young, and he comes from the Boken, which he says are Jedi that are trained in the wild after the temple fell. Shin asks if she's like the Boken, and Baylan says no, that he trained her to be something more. Shin asks him if he misses the Jedi Order. He says he misses more of like the idea of it, but he says that there was no future there. She asks him if he sees a future here on Peridea in this wasteland, and he says that he can see it was once the great witch kingdom of the Dathomiri, and that seems to be good enough for him. Shin says that the witches and Thrawn seem eager to leave this place, so maybe they should too, but Baylan thinks that they fear a power greater than their own. He says that something here calls to him, and something stirs here. He asks her if she feels and hears it. And it's then that Shin spots bandits in the distance, and Baylan tells her that the enemy of our enemy is our friend for now. Line often repeated in Star Wars. Back at the Noti camp, Sabine makes it around the camp, just walking around, kind of observing her surroundings, and she stops when she hears Ezra Bridger behind her telling her, "I knew I could count on you." And she looks at him with happy disbelief. They let this moment breathe and kind of hold on each of the actors for a second in just the perfect way, I think. He's wearing this dark red sort of robe thing and sporting longer hair and a full beard. And he kind of looks like he stepped right out of the animated Prince of Egypt. But he looks happy and healthy, so I'm happy with this. He gives her a little bit of shit, saying, you know, took you long enough, and she defends herself, saying that he didn't say where he was going. Ezra admits that he also did not know where he was going when he took off with the Purrgil and rebels. Sabine says, always a plan, never a good one. And Ezra tells her, hey, it worked out, didn't it? And then has to really stop and ask, it did work, right? And Sabine tells him that it did work, and they hug. Ezra starts to ask her how she found him, how she got here, but Sabine dismisses him and his questions, saying, for now, I just want to be happy that I found you. Ezra tells Sabine, thanks for coming, and says, I can't wait to go home. So then before we end this episode, we cut back to the Chimera, where Thrawn and Morgan meet with the Great Mothers, who tell him that a Jedi is coming with the whales. Thrawn says that is unwelcome news and asks Morgan if it's Ahsoka. Morgan says that's impossible, and Thrawn accuses her of underestimating a Jedi, as death and resurrections are common deceptions of Jedi and Night Sisters. Morgan says Baylan told her Ahsoka was dead, and Thrawn says Baylan was once a Jedi, so he is flawed too. Thrawn tells Morgan to brief him on Ahsoka's background, her history, homeworld, her master, and everything. He also tells her to destroy any Purrgil that approach Peridea. And then Thrawn tells the Great Mothers he once again requires the use of their dark magic. And this is how they're taking us out of this episode. Those of us who read Thrawn Alliances cannot wait to find out how Thrawn reacts to learning that Anakin/Vader was Ahsoka's master, and how he plans to use that information. I literally can't wait. But jumping back to Shin, Hati seems to be questioning her place in all of this. John, she's kind of questioning, like, did she put her trust in the right people? Where do you kind of think this story might be going for her?
Well, I think we're going to lead to her breaking away from all of this and choosing a side. And I don't know which side she's going to choose, because Baylan can want her to be this representative of a new Jedi Order, possibly, or new warrior, but that doesn't mean she's going to be what he wants her to be, right? And we're getting certainly the parent, daughter, or uncle niece vibes from their relationship. So the second she's getting more information from him, and she's almost like a ravenous child there when he's talking initially a few scenes ago about watching everything burn that he knew, and the Jedi and the Order 66, and her, what, you're really, oh yeah, tell me more. Like, she seems so. And then at this moment later, the section we're talking about now, she is much more like, we need to get off this planet. We need to do this. We need to do that. And Baylan is caught up with, no, I sense what's here, and we're going to align ourselves with these bandits in their pseudo samurai armor, and we're going to do this. And yeah, I think Shin is coming to the point where she's going to rebel against Baylan, because she'll be like, look, I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to be a part of this. Whatever you're trying to do is not something you told me about. I thought I was going to be trained in the power that I know. You're trying to create some power that is beyond me, because that's what it is. It's an old person who has seen more of the world than the young person, trying to force the young person to have the mentality that they have without having them go through the experiences that allowed you to have this wisdom now, this later in life. And so that never works out, because the young person is always going to rebel against that. And so I think eventually that's what we're headed towards in terms of their relationship. And if he's favorable to Ezra in any way, I think that's really going to turn her. And if he's favorable to Sabine, which I think she already suspects, because there's that moment on the ship when they're heading down where Sabine and Shin Hati share a look, and it isn't a positive look. So to me, that says there's still some unfinished business here. And even though she kind of defends her by saying, like, didn't you say you would honor your word to her? There is still something here that's unresolved. So I think there's openings for sure.
Yeah. Thoughts on seeing Ezra Bridger? You were a Rebels fan. You watched it, right? Like, I mean, we've been waiting for this moment. Like, my mind exploded. I was so happy. What did you think? I wasn't even that big of an Ezra fan either. I didn't watch Rebels for Ezra, and I've been so looking forward to this, and it 100% lived up to it for me.
I like this Ezra. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the Ezra and Rebels got on my nerves a lot, especially in the later seasons, because I started to become a bigger Sabine fan than Ezra. Like, I wanted more for Sabine, and of course, Tia Sakar's voiceover performance was so good, it made me care about the character even more. So having Natasha Liu Bordizzo really kind of be the secondary lead of this show has been fun to see. So when she sees Ezra doesn't take the spotlight, and I kind of like that. It is, he's very much who he is, and you can react to that with your own stuff from having seen Rebels. But their hug is genuine. Their ball busting is genuine. I thought it would be much more of a, like, oh my God, I thought it'd be more that. But they're both warriors, so they're not gonna like give too much of their emotions. So there was an authenticity to their reunion. Would I've liked to have seen it maybe shot in a different way? Maybe he's surprised that she shows up, or maybe we see her coming over the hill through one of those Star Wars binoculars things that show up in all the series and movies. Sure, but this whole seeing him out of focus and then him saying the line and then boom, he's in focus, leaning against one of these huts. That's classic Ezra. So for me, it did work overall. The look is something I'm going to have to get used to. But overall, the energy between them, I thought was really nice. And Laura, I've never felt this way about Ezra and Sabine, but I sensed a little sexual tension here. I sensed something in the connection and the conversation. I never sensed that in the animated thing, and I didn't sense it when she saw him as a hologram, but something about the energy between them, and maybe more from Ezra and less from Sabine, which could be interesting. So I don't know. I could be way off base, though.
I don't know. I mean, the shippers are out there. The Sub-Ezra shippers, they are out there, and they are loud and excited about this. I've never gotten into this ship personally. I never kind of sensed that. And even this, I think the ball busting and the sort of the past references in this series where they kind of talk about being feeling more like brother and sister, that's kind of where it's landed and where it seems to be staying for me. I mean, if it goes somewhere else, I'm not going to be, angry about it and shouting about it online. Right. But not something I picked up on very much.
But they'll have to do the work to convince you. They'll have to do the work, right?
Yeah. I don't know. That wasn't the sort of vibe or chemistry that I got. Now, Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, on the other hand. No, I know. And a lot of people don't see that either. We all see what we want to see. I've
never seen that. Yeah.
I know. I don't know. But I was very excited to see him. I'm the same way, though. I was never a big fan of Ezra, but I actually got more fond of him as the series went on. I wasn't really fond of early seasons Ezra because he was just a 14-year-old annoying kid. So as he sort of got older and more mature, I found him less annoying. So I'll be very curious to see how much they sort of push that kind of precociousness in this version of Ezra, or if he's kind of fully outgrown that at this point. Because it's been, 10 plus years since we last see him. He's like pushing 30, if not 30 already. But yeah, that I think that the way that they shot it really actually worked well for me. I think the sort of like holding on to the camera, holding on each character for sort of the perfect amount of time, letting it breathe and not having it be this like overly excited, like gasping, happy moment. It was sort of this more quiet, reserved, not over the top. I thought it worked. I thought it just worked. It did make me really, really want to see like a Hera Ezra reunion, because that is one of the things I'm missing a little bit now. I'm like, she hasn't been gone long. She's only been gone like for one episode, but I'm already kind of missing Hera. And I'll be very curious if we get to see that reunion at some point, because that will be different, I think, and better in some ways almost than this. But yeah, I think I'm really still kind of focused on all the questions I have. I'm like, how long did you stay with Thrawn? How did you guys survive this trip through hyperspace with the Purrgil, exposed to the elements, with all of the windows on the Chimera like blown out? Like I have so many questions that I still need to get answered. And I can't imagine that they're going to go through every detail that I want them to in this series, but like a book or comic or something. I need to know. I must know my answers to this.
I agree with you, because also, how long have you guys been out here, and Thrawn can't find you? That seems odd to me. All this time with the dark magic, with all these troopers, they can't seem to find you. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure the Noti are incredibly well versed in hiding in plain sight and what have you, but I mean, Sabine was able to find you pretty fast. So I wonder how Thrawn has not been able to find you all this time. So there's questions here that need to be, or gaps that need to be filled in here with some of the questions that I'm having as well. Because he seems to care almost little or nothing for the fact that Ezra is the reason he's even in this situation. There's no illusion or conversation or back and forth about it, other than saying, I'm sending 2 squads out to kill them. That's it. But in no way is he like, oh, that guy, there's none of that. So I find that to be interesting, to be bested by somebody and not have that hang over you. So
I wonder if maybe it's a thing where he knew, like, his whole goal, Thrawn's whole goal, is to get back to the galaxy, get back to the Empire. And he knew that keeping Ezra around will probably only hinder that. And so kind of releasing him into the wild was probably in his favor, to kind of let him go. And I would imagine Ezra maybe had some eagerness to get away from Thrawn at that point. But I mentioned this earlier. I can't help but think that, like, when Ezra finds out what Sabine did, that he is not going to be happy. I mean, he sacrificed himself to save Lothal, to save his planet, and she just sacrificed the whole galaxy to save him. I mean, she has gone and done the exact opposite of what he sort of stands for. And I wonder, when we sort of dig into that with them, if that's going to create a little bit of tension.
Well, and as I said earlier, once you bring Ahsoka into it, who is on the way, it's really going to bring in a lot of tension, right? Because Ahsoka thinks, or is, as Huyang points out, that's Ahsoka's fear, is that Sabine did this from a selfish place. And so you're going to have Ahsoka and Ezra both kind of verbally tag teaming Sabine about her decision. What is her reaction going to be to all of this? So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see here too. Will that be something she can navigate out of? Will it anger her? What is the reaction going to be, and what's Ezra's decision going to be ultimately? Because he says he wants to get home. Thrawn says he wants to get off this, or get out of this galaxy. It seems like Thrawn's ship is one of the big ways to go, and we'll see how the Purrgil work into this, because he said he wants the Purrgil to be exterminated with extreme prejudice. So I don't know. Questions abound.
A lot of questions that hopefully get answered in the only 2 remaining episodes of this show. I can't believe that we're here, that it's like almost over. I had kind of thought that we would get, I guess I had kind of hoped that we would get farther in this story than we did, that we would have been, by episode 6, we would have been a little bit farther along in this. But I'm still really happy overall with the sort of pacing of this and where we are. I just think that they have a lot to accomplish and a lot of questions to answer in the last 2 episodes. I don't expect to get all of them. I'm sure that they're planning to do multiple seasons of this show. But there's some stuff that I really kind of hope they don't leave us hanging for God knows how long it'll take to get the next season of this show made. Yeah.
I'm with you there. But you like the energy overall of this episode.
Yeah. Overall, and and like I said at the beginning, it was really hard to kind of live up to the high that I had from part 5. This was definitely a different like environment, a different atmosphere, a different feel than that episode, as it should have been. You can't have a bunch of episodes 5s. It would be too much. So I like that they sort of brought it down a little bit, but also kept me so freaking hyped because we got Thrawn and Ezra. Like, oh my God. I'm still reeling a little bit from that. So that's exciting. And this episode directed by veteran television director JENNIFER GETZINGER. That was really exciting to get another female director in the lineup here.
Yeah. I know on the TV side of things, it feels to me like we're seeing more and more female directors. I just finished watching the screeners for season 2 of Bosch Legacy, and there's like 7 female directors for different episodes. So we're seeing that more and more, and especially in Star Wars, you're seeing the focus. They're not making a big deal out of it, but you're seeing the names there in all these different series. Steph Green being crossing over into multiple series and stuff. So yeah, that's great. I love to see it. It's good perspective, and there's no difference, and I love the approach, so yeah, it's good things.
For sure. Any final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, here's my final thoughts. I want to see more of Thrawn's brains. Let's see more of his planning, his military tactician stuff. I want to see more of that, and I'm hoping that there is going to be stuff with that in the next couple of episodes that allow us to really breathe in Thrawn, and for people who've never watched Rebels or read any of the books to really understand why this guy carries this kind of weight. And a lot of people are like, well, we didn't have any information on Vader in the original trilogy. I'm like, yeah, but we saw Vader messing people up. We saw Vader force choking people. We saw the villainy and brutality of Vader. That scared us. That did all the work. We haven't seen that necessarily from Thrawn as an introduction. So I want to see where we're going. Is this the Thrawn that we left Rebels, with Rebels, or is this a Thrawn that's been out in this area for so long? He's grown desperate, frustrated. Night magic is keeping his troops alive or together. So are there holes, are there cracks in the Thrawn veneer here that he is papering over? And I want to see what we're going to get from him in the next 2 episodes, and what's the truth here about the condition he's in,
I think one thing he has learned is to not underestimate the Force, and he is certainly guilty of doing that in Rebels. So he's learned some lessons. So it'll be interesting to see how those lessons are applied in the next 2.
For sure. All right, well, there you go. That's our review of episode 6 here of Ahsoka Far, Far Away. Thank you all so much for joining us, whether you're watching us on YouTube here on the Outlaw Nation channel or listening to us on the podcast feed. We appreciate it madly. Laura, another fun episode. Please let people know where they can find you, what you got going on, and another great job leading our review as you've been doing every week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at shutup_Laura. You can also find me there on Instagram. And then you can find the show that I host with my friend Alice, where we drink wine and talk about Star Wars. That's called Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour. And you can find that on Twitter at Force Toast Pod.
There you go. As for me, at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, the Outlaw Nation on Twitch. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. We're marching towards 50,000. So please subscribe down below and hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the content we do here. Leave comments down below. Let us know if you thought it was great, not good, was missing anything, or you thought it was everything you possibly wanted. What are your thoughts on Thrawn? Your thoughts on Ezra? Let us all know all of that down in the comment section below. Are you shipping anybody in this? I don't know. Let me know. Let us know down there, and we'll definitely respond to some of the comments that are down there as well. All right. Well, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of the Jedi Way. And Laura, what do we have to leave them with?
Until next time, remember, your focus determines your reality.